For more than 2 decades, Graham Norton has welcomed thousands of guests onto his iconic red sofa. Actors, musicians, comedians, athletes, even the occasional politician. His show became legendary not only because of his humor, but because of his ability to make people relax, loosen up, and show an unexpected side of themselves. Yet even with all his charm and experience, not every guest has been easy. Some interviews left him exhausted, others left him frustrated, and a few, just a few, became the rare moments he openly admits he couldn't stand. Today, we revisit 6 guests who pushed Graham Norton to his limits. Some were tense, some chaotic, some painfully silent. But all of them share one thing: their appearance on the show was unforgettable. For reasons no one expected, Harvey Weinstein, the interview that changed in hindsight. In the early years of the show, Graham Norton welcomed Hollywood's major power players. At the time, Harvey Weinstein was one of them. When he appeared, the atmosphere on set shifted immediately. He wasn't loud, he wasn't aggressive, but he carried a presence that made everyone slightly uneasy. Even before the scandals emerged, Norton sensed something he couldn't quite define. During the interview, Weinstein tried to dominate the conversation, not in an entertaining way but in a controlling one. He interrupted other guests. He redirected questions toward himself. He insisted on steering the show like he was the producer in charge. Nothing he did was openly cruel, yet it held a kind of quiet arrogance that would later make perfect sense. In interviews years after the scandal, Norton reflected on that night with a tone that suggested much more than he said aloud. "I had no idea at the time," he admitted, but looking back, it all makes sense. The episode still exists online, but it's rarely revisited. Fans describe it as uncomfortable. Norton sees it as a reminder. Sometimes the worst people don't arrive accompanied by thunder. They simply walk in, smile, and try to bend the room to their will. Mickey Rourke, when silence took over. If Weinstein was overwhelming, Mickey Rourke was the opposite: unreadable, distant, and quiet, to the point of discomfort. Rourke is known for being intense, unpredictable, and eccentric. But when he appeared on The Graham Norton Show, he brought none of his wild charm. Instead, he delivered one of the most painfully silent interviews in the show's history. The moment he sat down, everyone could see he didn't want to be there. His posture slumped, his eyes unfocused, his answers short and cryptic. Norton threw him lifeline after lifeline. Questions about boxing, acting, his comeback, even humorous prompts. Nothing landed. The audience laughed when Norton tried to joke about Rourke's role in The Wrestler. Rourke didn't. He barely nodded. The silence was suffocating. A producer later said, "It was like talking to a wall." Even Graham couldn't save it. When the show aired, viewers noticed how drained Norton looked. He admitted later that it was one of the most difficult interviews of his career, not because Rourke was rude, but because he was simply absent. Some guests bring chaos, others bring emptiness. And for a host whose job is to create connection, that emptiness is the hardest of all. Kevin Costner, the night charisma, turned to stone. Kevin Costner is a Hollywood legend, an icon known for his calm, stoic presence. But that presence, which serves him well in dramatic films, didn't translate well to the lively, unpredictable style of Norton's show. From the moment he walked on stage, Costner behaved as though he was at a press conference rather than a talk show. His answers were polite, but slow, precise, but stiff. No matter how playful Norton became, Costner remained steady, controlled, almost expressionless. Norton later joked, "Some people just don't get what this show is. It's meant to be silly." Whenever Norton cracked a joke, Costner paused before responding, as if carefully analyzing the question. When other guests told funny stories, he listened with the seriousness of a historian studying a documentary. Costner wasn't unpleasant, just utterly mismatched to the show's tone. By the end, Norton looked relieved to shift the focus elsewhere. In a career filled with unpredictable madness, this interview stood out because it lacked something essential: chemistry. It was a reminder that not all disasters are dramatic. Some are simply dull. Daryl Hannah, the interview that tested his patience. Among the hundreds of guests Norton has hosted, one interview stands out as the moment he truly felt his patience slipping. Daryl Hannah. She arrived to promote a film, and everything suggested the night would be easy. But as soon as the conversation began, something felt off. Her answers were short, sometimes a single word. She didn't laugh, she didn't elaborate, she didn't engage with the other guests. A talk show thrives on rhythm, and Hannah gave Norton nothing to work with. He tried humor, he tried empathy, he even tried self-deprecating jokes. None of it broke through. The silence between questions grew heavier and heavier. Other guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. The studio audience shifted in their seats. Norton said later, "I felt like I was dragging the conversation uphill with a rope." By the end of her segment, Norton was visibly exhausted. Viewers noticed how quickly he shifted the spotlight to anyone else. He admitted it was the one time he truly lost patience internally. There were no arguments, no scandals, no drama, just a complete collapse of connection. And for Norton, that's the most unbearable experience of all. Mark Wahlberg. When chaos took control. While some guests were quiet, Mark Wahlberg brought the opposite problem. Too much energy, and none of it controlled. Wahlberg's appearance on the show became instantly infamous. He arrived in a rowdy, unpredictable mood, interrupting other guests and at times treating the show like a personal playground. He sat, well, more like collapsed, across Graham's lap at one point. He rambled, teased, and spoke over others, sometimes making the audience laugh, sometimes making them cringe. Norton handled the situation with humor, but there were moments where even he struggled to keep things on track. The chaos overshadowed every other guest on the sofa, Norton later commented. It was one of those nights where you just try to ride the wave and hope it doesn't drown you. Wahlberg wasn't mean-spirited, just overwhelmingly unpredictable. And while Norton thrives on spontaneity, this crossed the line into total loss of control. Some interviews are silent, some are stiff. This one was a whirlwind Norton probably hoped he'd never repeat. The guest he never named, the one who left him speechless. Over the years, Norton has hinted, without naming names, about a sixth guest who frustrated him more than most. Someone who wasn't scandalous, rude, or chaotic, but who acted as if the show wasn't worth their time. They gave superficial answers, avoided interaction, and treated the entire evening like an obligation. Norton never publicly revealed who this person was, but fans have speculated for years. What he did say was simple. When someone gives you nothing, you realize how fragile the whole thing is. To Norton, indifference is the most painful form of disrespect, not because it ruins the show, but because it drains the room of its soul. This unnamed guest became a symbol of everything Norton finds difficult: a refusal to engage, to laugh, to connect. Unlike chaos or arrogance, indifference leaves no story, just an empty space where conversation should have lived. After decades of interviews, brilliant, chaotic, awkward, and occasionally disastrous, Graham Norton has learned that not every moment on television can be perfect. Some guests challenge him, some surprise him, some frustrate him, but those difficult nights don't define his career. If anything, they highlight the extraordinary chemistry he builds with most of his guests. Norton's gift is not just humor, it's connection. It's the ability to take a couch full of strangers and turn them into a moment of shared storytelling the world wants to watch. And for every silent evening or awkward pause, there are dozens of episodes where laughter erupts, stories unfold, and unforgettable moments are born. In the end, the guests he couldn't stand are part of the story. But the magic of the show lives with the ones who came ready to shine. If you want to watch another video, just click on the screen.